You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
So are you excited for this conversation?
I have really big expectations for it.
I have really big expectations for this conversation as well.
I need all my expectations met.
Right. We're bringing all of the expectations
All of them.
to this episode today. What we're unpacking on the podcast this week or on today's episode is expectations and how they just fuck everybody over from the very beginning of time.
Right.
So the whole idea of, I guess we all know what expectations are, but how do we learn to manage and control / let go of our own expectations? Because I have been reflecting on this pretty much all year long in some capacity, right? In some way. And what I'm realizing is that every single time I get upset about something, like it doesn't matter what, and it doesn't matter in relation to what, meaning it might be in our relationship, it might be with the kids, it might be outside forces, it might be dealing with the grocery store or the traffic light or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. Every single time I get upset or that I get sad or I get whatever, cold, right? Like I went outside today to pick up dog shit. I had an expectation that it was going to be a little bit warmer than it actually was. Halfway through the shit pickup, I was cold. So one of my expectations was not met. So that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Is all of these expectations that we like surround ourselves with, that we pile on in an effort to protect ourselves from the unknown.
Hold other people accountable to.
And then when those expectations aren't met,
right. Dun, dun, dun.
Chaos ensues. So that's what we're going to talk about this week.
Right.
And I mean, initially it's just like, oh yeah, don't have expectations and then you're fine.
Also, how?
Right?
How do you not have expectations?
So I thought it would be fun for us to look at it again through the lens of like, what were expectations that we had for each other when we first met?
Oh yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation.
Versus
I'm
expectations
excited.
that we have today in our relationship.
Right?
Does it look like a fun lens to look at it
No,
through first
no.
and
I
foremost?
thought we were going to like paint it out on the world, not dive into expectations in our relationship. Like, all right. I have this phrase that keeps coming to mind. Like there was this post I saw years ago and it stuck with me. And it's been one of those that just kept coming back and coming back. And now I can see it a little clearer than I could. It was something, I don't know if they said who or what hurt you. It was just a text. Like we'll say, who hurt you? And the response was only my own expectations. And it was like, oh man.
Right?
That like right in the belly. Like right in the belly.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, because if you would have done this, and if you wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't be hurt right now.
Yeah, all those expectations.
Right? And it was like, oh, I just expected. I don't know. I didn't there's the thing. It's convoluted, right? Because I feel like there's healthy expectations, right? Ego says.
There's conscious ones and subconscious ones.
I definitely had more expectations based off of perceived, and here's another one, right? So since we're talking about our relationship, how you showed up and presented yourself to be created expectations, right?
That I didn't
hold
up.
Just as I did the same. And I still have to catch myself doing that.
What are some of those ways you think? Because you're right. I think that I definitely showed up with a whole bunch of expectations.
It's not just you. It's me too.
I agree. I'm just saying, like,
right?
what are
and
some of those?
Like still in life, there's hard. Like you'll have, especially when you're on a high day, you're having a good day,
right.
You're like feeling possible and
everything's going well,
energetic and capable. And then you're like, I can do all these things. And then people are like, great. And then you blink, low mood hits, all of that. And you're like, I can't do any of these things. And so you're like, that throws into the letting everybody down. So you also create expectations that you can't hold up because you're expecting that of yourself, thinking that's how you have to show up instead of how like reasonable. Like who put those expectations on you that's how you had to show up? Right. You're not responsible for the expectations other people put on you. And
also the ones that you put on yourself.
And you're responsible for the ones that you put on yourself.
Think about it though.
Okay.
Like,
well, I feel like a little bit of accountability needs to come in because otherwise everybody's going to throw their hands up and be like, sucks to be you.
But just in the example that you gave, right, where, because I can imagine like I mean, we have this all the time where people are like, hey, do you guys want to do this thing? We're like, yeah, we want to do that thing. And it's 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
And then that thing shows up.
Yeah. We're like, oh my God.
Like, oh my God, I don't want to go do this
How do I
thing.
find the energy for this?
And that is an expectation that I placed on myself.
But also
that I didn't meet.
You thought you could
exactly.
at that time.
Well, that's what an expectation is.
Right? That's true.
It's a belief in a future thing.
It's a belief in the fact that we can be social. We can be social. We have the ability to make connections and friends and not hide away.
I think some of my subconscious expectations of you.
Okay.
And I guess like maybe not necessarily you specifically, but like of
Okay.
you in our relationship. So kind of like our expectations for our relationship.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was just be way easier.
Yeah.
Like I had a really clear expectation, especially since this was like not ours, meaning yours and mine's, but this was both our second marriages, right? So we'd both had previous marriages. So I thought,
man, we got this shit figured out
we're
now.
going to do so much better this go around. So I had really high expectations for us.
I had the same expectation, babe.
And for
right
you.
There. Yeah.
Where it was like, you know.
This is the healthy version. This is where it's easy. This is where it's good.
All those mistakes that we both made
magical
in our
thinking.
previous relationships, those were all just going to disappear and be fine. Yeah. So that's one that was subconscious, I think. I don't know if I necessarily, it's not like we ever verbalized that one.
No,
necessarily,
I don't think so. I don't think I was like, I mean, now I think I'd go into a relationship like that. I was like, hey, dude, I'm going to need you to work on a healing journey. Yes, will I? No, I'm just kidding.
Can you think of anyone that, not any person, but any expectation in the beginning of our relationship that was like very quickly not realized?
Wasn't like very quickly. It took me a long time to realize. And
Ferris Bueller was
even
absent
nine times. And even when I did realize, I refused. I was like, no, I will hold on to this with everything I had. Is that we could take our blended family and turn it into the Brady Bunch.
God, right. We both had that one.
Yeah. That was my biggest expectation of everything is we had one big, happy, loving family where everybody just adored and cherished each other. And we were also like, we were the Brady Bunch. We were closer than close. Like this is it. We created the ultimate healing, amazing place.
We had that expectation.
Yeah.
And it failed miserably. Like I think we kept that expectation in the forefront of what drove us. For years past the point that it was healthy or beneficial to do that.
It wasn't healthy. Like, I mean, like having that, like, ideal. But man, not only did we have that expectation, we tried to force it. And so every action that I took, oh my gosh, all of my, I don't know why it didn't work. I gave it my all. I was a dedicated, obsessive person for that.
Right.
And it just fucking had the complete opposite effect, which broke my heart. It just broke my heart. I've only within the last, I think it was 2019, I think, is when I finally put it down.
Put down that expectation?
Yeah. When I finally quit trying.
Yeah.
When I finally was like, all right, this is what it is. I'm no longer trying to
just let it be what it is.
Yeah. And it was a bloody battle.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, it was very hard. So that's my biggest one that I'm still recovering from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is hard. That was a very sad thing to let go of.
Yeah.
Was the idea that image that we had in our minds. And I don't even think we talked about that one either necessarily.
I think we just knew it was going to happen.
Right? That we were both
How would it not happen?
Going to fall in love, and that meant that our families were going to blend
all
perfectly.
The love that we had coming in, how do you all not love each other as much as we love you?
Yeah.
How did it how do you I don't know. There was a very clear divide that I should have allowed just to be a divide.
Yeah.
And not tried to be like, no, this is, I don't know. I mean, we weren't by ourselves in that. We had outside forces that were really working on us not having a happy family.
There were so many things.
But I think if I would have let go of that expectation and not held to it so tightly, the possibility of that actually blossoming would have been there.
See, here's another expectation.
God damn it. Well, at least that one's like, hey, there was a chance.
See, that, like what you just did, and this isn't criticism or judgment, I recognize that same thing in myself where I will recreate a new expectation,
right,
in order to
based
deal
off
with
of the previous failed one.
Right. So that one failed. Okay. Well, I think that had we done that,
right, okay,
then it would have turned out perfectly.
Thanks for catching me in that little loop of chaos that I tried to stir right there. It's the
continual perpetuation of being able to sit with not being able to sit with uncomfortable feelings. Right. So I have an uncomfortable feeling that it's too difficult for me to sit with. So I'll create an expectation in order to sugarcoat it to make it go away. Yeah. I'm really trying to think of like what in our relationship were some expectations that I had that were just like completely no way in chance those were going to be met. Okay. Like I'm trying to think.
I can't get past that one. I think that's the biggest one that we've had the most issues with.
That is. In some ways, I think you're right. Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk a lot about that.
Right? Because now we're sad.
Yeah, that one sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean...
And even where it's at today with our life and with our relationship and our kids and everything, it's not ideal. It's not the expectation that we even want today.
Yeah.
But are we able to just let it be what it is?
Right. That's something we can do. Everybody's on their own journey. They get to be on their journey. We're on ours. Everybody has like that autonomy as opposed to let's just
micromanaging control.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like legit, what did we expect of each other? I'm trying to think. Like I expected you to I don't know if I had a ton of unreasonable expectations of you per se. I think I had more unreasonable expectations of me.
Okay. Oh, felt that.
That I expected myself to be able to show up differently in our relationship. I expected myself to be able to meet you differently. I expected myself to, because when I think about it from the lens of like, because we were in our 30s, so we were somewhat
barely
adultish.
We sure thought we were. I remember thinking 30 was old. Now I'm like 30. Like, are you even allowed to vote yet? Yeah. It's like you're a baby.
You're just a little baby. I didn't have silly things about, because the thing that keeps coming to my mind is it's like, well, I have an expectation that we're going to have sex every week. And maybe I did. Maybe that was an expectation that we were going to have a healthy sex life.
We did that for a very long time.
Right? We did do that for a very long time. And then that expectation went as well. But I don't think I had any really big expectations specifically about you. Like I wasn't sitting there in the back of my mind expecting you to do this, expecting you to do that. Do you know what I mean? Where are you at?
I'm here on the podcast.
Sorry,
Keep going.
Looked like you were lost in thought.
Yeah, well, maybe, but mind your own business. Talk about your own feelings.
Is any of this coming to mind for you? Stuff that you had in relation to me, or is it all just that self-internalized expectations that you failed to meet?
There's a lot of self-internalized expectations that I failed to meet. Absolutely. Like that resonated to a core. Also, like I thought that you were going to be the safest person in the world. I'm like, you were literally a cop. Like, not that I had that, but just like I thought you were going to be the safest. You showed up with like so much love and compassion and protection. And like, not only just like, you were like all of this intelligence and emotional intelligence. You had the answers. Like you had all of this. And I thought that like I didn't have to worry anymore. There was all of this space and, which, we've talked about how that became really detrimental on different levels because I didn't listen to me. I had only listened to you. But like, I didn't think I was going to have to I just thought it was going to be the safest thing in the world. You know, I didn't think that there was going to be things that were challenging, which I realize is ridiculous, but not at that time, not with the information I had at that time, not with my life experiences at that time. It was a very like that's how you present. I thought that like, holy shit, I'm never going to be good enough for this person. You know, you were just, so there was your humanness came through, and that was, right? It sounds super shitty, but I got surprised a lot. I got surprised a lot.
It makes me think, so you sharing that makes me think that maybe I was expecting, like, hear me out, because I think the same thing for myself too, right?
Yeah.
Was I had an expectation that our shit wasn't going to be that big of a deal in our relationship.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't.
Like I had an expectation that we had enough of our shit handled and under control and aware that it wasn't going to really be that big of a deal in our relationship. So I thought that like whatever your baggage was wasn't going to be that big of a deal, because at this point in our lives, we had already handled a lot of it, dealt with a lot of it, knew about it, were aware of it. So in my mind, I thought, yeah, it's not going to be that big of a deal. We're going to be able to get through all of those things. And we did, right? We got through all of those things. But our baggages, our baggage claim area for both of us was like packed full of, I think that's you, babe.
Oh, I'm getting a phone call. I'll have to get back to it.
Is it one that you need to take?
Yes, but.
Can you mute it or do the thing where it goes to voicemail, or do you not want to do that? It's just causing all that feedback is all.
It'll be fine.
Okay. I don't think
It'll be done in a second. I close the screen. That's the best I can do. Move on. Lower your expectations, dude.
Right?
Keep your expectations to yourself. How I handle my things are fine. I don't need your approval. I know it won't stop. I'm trying to talk over it so you don't hear it. La da 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 da. I kicked it away. It's gone. Move on. Sometimes they're static. You can't expect there not to be static sometimes.
In a relationship. Sometimes they're static in a relationship.
Jesus.
Yeah. It was comical to think that we had our baggage under control in any way. Right. We didn't at all. That was a very surprising thing for me, was how much of our shit just started opening up in our relationship. But where do you want to go with this conversation?
Well, this is rough. I thought we were going to talk about expectations in general. I didn't think we were going to be like, hey, like, so I just didn't think we were going here. So I'm very surprised, and it's like emotional.
Yeah.
So I'm also in the phase of my cycle where things are very emotional for me. So I'm over here just trying to hang on.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What are some expectations in your life that you've had to deal with?
I don't know how to deal with, like, everything has changed. My whole life is completely different. Every single expectation I've had is
gone.
Nothing has been what I expected.
Just had to let them all go.
I am so close. Like, I'm just like, disclaimer. Okay, I'm super close. So I'm emotional. I don't want to be booby right now, but I'm totally feeling all the emotions.
Yeah. Well, remember, we're not apologizing for crying anymore, so you get to cry as much as you want without any apologies. And you can still apologize for crying too.
Oh, thanks.
Even if you do cry. I think about, as I have sat with this concept and idea of like all of my suffering in some ways is stemming from an expectation or a need that wasn't met. Because most of my expectations are in relation to my needs and my wants, right? And I've had to really process through how those expectations not only were not met, but so many of the expectations that I have had over the course of my life, because if on top of the conversation that we've been having just in relation to our relationship and everything, but I mean, I've been reflecting on this in relation to childhood and the expectations that I had on my parents, on my siblings, on, my entire family, my extended family, on the community that I grew up in, like all of these things, on my friends. Like I'm just looking at it through this lens now of like so many expectations of mine were not met.
Right.
And so many of the expectations that I placed onto other people and or relationships were fantasy created like expectations. Like I had all of my relationships with friends are this idealistic version of what friendship should be that I've created over the course of my life as like the thing that I really want, the ideal situation. And none of them measure up, right? None of them are that. And it's unrealistic to be like, that's the whole thing, is expectations in some way are about a perfect scenario, even if your expectations aren't quote unquote like perfect, right? But they're this whole thing. They're like an expectation is a hope. It's a want. It's this thing that you're putting out there. And it's so hard for me to like grapple with. But all I can be like, the only thing that can happen with an expectation is for that expectation to not be met.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think that's true. I mean, that gets to be your journey of it, right? That totally gets to be it. I think expectations in the unhealthy form, right? I mean, there's also, I think it gets convoluted and twisted from being young and having unmet needs, having your needs not met, but you being expected to meet others' needs, like you having those expectations put on you. And it just kind of like turns into this unhealthy, into this unhealthy twist where we get it missed and like tangled. And then we try to re-implement those kind of strategies and those things. And I think a lot of expectations do get met, just nobody are talking about those. You know, we're talking about the things that are like, yeah, that didn't work out. And what about what did? You know, what needs were met? What expectations or hopes were achieved, met, and exceeded? Like there's both. I don't know. I definitely think expectations are, I'm kind of on the fence here. I'm kind of on the fence because I think expectations and obligations and demands are close, but they're different. Like you can have, I think I'm almost wondering if what we're touching on is the demands of others. When we demand, like in order for somebody to be in our space, they must show up this exact way. I don't know. I just feel like there's more here. I feel like we're scratching on something that's a lot more, because to say you're not supposed to have expectations at all, I kind of feel like, I mean, I'm on the journey, right? I'm learning. So who knows how wrong I'll think I am later on down the road. But for right now, I think there are expectations. I think there are expectations, and there's like boundaries that get to be held. And yeah, people are going to mess up. You know, they're not going to meet those expectations. You're going to mess up. You're not going to meet your expectations. You're going to mess up in putting too high of expectations on others. You mess up when you put too high of expectations on yourself, which we pretty much, I feel like we all do. We all have to demand this of us. And then either it's never enough and we just keep pushing, just belittling ourselves, or we just never measure up to begin with, and we are just full of self-worth, or not full of self-worth. That'd be great, right? We're just like hurting ourselves. Confidence. And then a lot of times that becomes projected onto others. The expectations that we have for ourselves that we're struggling to meet, we project onto others and want them to meet those expectations, because that's what we're holding ourselves to and hiding from the fact that we're failing. So there's like so many different ways that this comes up, I think. And there is that surrendering, that not having attachment to how somebody else is going to show up in your space, not having attachment to how things are going to show up. Like I recognize like our relationship is something that we choose. We choose it every day. And I still have expectations of you. I still have things that you get to show up as And like, and I feel like you do with me too. Like I have to, and it's not because it's like, you have to meet these things in order to be in my space. It's like, this is like, these are my boundaries. This is like what I want in a partner. It's not this check off list of, if you don't meet this, you don't, fit in the space. But like, if I'm a terrible person and I'm destroying you, and I'm just like, I don't expect you at that point to keep me in your life, and vice versa. And maybe something happens to where you tank out and you just go on this rampage of fuckery,
Yeah.
And then am I expected to stay with you for that? No, I'm not. But will I? Who knows? I feel like I would, but it depends. That's not like full key reign to go fuckery around, right? There's a difference when somebody is hurting and being there for them, and then when somebody is hurting you. Now, that's not to say that somebody isn't hurting themselves, that hurting when they are hurting you, but you get to decide what's in your space. And those expectations are, I don't know, there's this, I'm really toying with it. I don't have the correct verbiage for it, because there are healthy needs and healthy boundaries. And I think when we come in and say no expectations, that might confuse that and cloud that a little bit. And I definitely don't want to do that, because there's healthy needs, healthy boundaries. And I don't know if that is completely absent from expectations. I'm playing with that a little bit. I have to like really sit with that, because I have needs. Yes, you are not expected to meet my needs. I am. Those are up to me.
Yeah.
And the needs that I have from my partner, you get to choose. And whether you meet those or not, that's not your job. I want you to, right? But that also, does that fit your needs of how you want to show up as a partner? And when they align, is that an expectation? When there's a behavior that comes up from either one of us that the other person is like, okay, you don't have to change that behavior, but that behavior is not welcome in my space. Is that an expectation that's been broken, or is that a healthy boundary? And then go ahead.
No, you're good.
I'm just trying to wrap this around. I'm just trying to like really flesh it out, because there's so much more here. I know, like, I get the sense of the expectation of that panic, like the expectation of this has to be this way, this has to be this way. And I definitely get trapped in that. And there's no good that comes from it has to be this way.
Right.
But I'm trying to flesh out the differences between needs, boundaries, and expectations. Does that make sense?
They do. And in my mind, the way that I've been working with them all lately is they're all the same. Because I have found that it's a violation of my own internal boundary when I set an expectation in relation to what somebody else is going to do or not do.
Oh, yeah.
So like it's
that
taking
clicks.
my own autonomy, my own mental health. It's taking my own, like, how I feel.
Yes.
And placing it outside of me in regards to what somebody is going to do or not do.
Yes.
And I've recognized that, like, for me, a boundary is I don't place those expectations externally anymore. Now, that's the ideal, like that's my ideal goal, right? Like that's the pinnacle of an expectation for myself, is to not do that behavior anymore, right? Instead, allow for the person to have their experience, whatever it might be. And then my new expectation is it's up to me to decide how I react and respond to that external stimulus. It's not like I've been doing it with our silly dog, right?
Yeah.
We've got this beautiful terror that is 7 months old, and she's a lab pit mix, and we definitely love her. And if you follow us on social, you'll see her every now and then in our stories and stuff. Her name's Roxy. And I have like let go of all the expectations of this little dog that I used to have.
Yeah.
I expected her to do exactly what we told her to do. I expected her to not chew the Christmas tree. I expected her to
not eat our deck.
Not
like
eat
literally
the deck.
Eat the deck.
Like be told, like all of these things that I expected this dog to do, she hadn't done any of them.
Yeah.
She'd done the complete opposite. right? Because she's a dog.
But we've had, like, she's the most difficult dog we've ever had.
Well,
She's the most
she
difficult
may or may
dog
not be.
I've ever had.
Right. But the whole thing is, she's just a dog.
Yeah.
She don't fucking care what my expectations are of her,
Mm.
right? She was never communicated effectively by me to not eat the Christmas tree.
Well, you need to work on your communication skills.
I do. And I need to adjust my expectations.
Right.
So I practice it with the dog, and then I try to implement it with people.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody in my life, I have a certain expectation in regards to that relationship. All of our kids, with you, all of my friends, I have a certain level of like expectation of this is what that relationship looks like, or will look like, or is going to look like, right? And the more that I stop placing my fears and my anxieties and my stresses on some external expectation of what somebody else is supposed to do, the more firmer, like it feels like my boundaries are being upheld, as opposed to feeling like my boundaries are being crossed.
Yeah.
Because the only person, like, it's not a boundary, it's an expectation, but now it feels like I have firmer boundaries because I'm not placing that externally. I'm now holding that internal, like, I get to be in control of how I feel. I can choose to let Roxy drive me crazy when she eats the fucking porch or she scratches on our window, right? We have a window that's right by our front porch. And so she's able to like hang off the side of the deck, and she has torn the screen from the window. And now she'll just like scratch at the window when she wants to come in. But because she's only 7 months old, she'll fucking play with us the whole time. So she'll scratch like she wants to come in. And then when we go to let her in, she like walks away. And she's like, I was just being silly. I didn't really want to come in. And so that's the whole game that she plays. And it drives us crazy. Like, I know I'm not alone in this. And I recognize every time she really gets to me and really drives me crazy, it's because I have a certain expectation. Maybe in the moments, that's the expectation of you getting up and getting her instead of me having to. Or for the 50th time of me getting up to go get her, my expectation is that this will be the time that she actually comes in. Instead of just going like, okay, the reality is she's going to play that game until she doesn't anymore. And I could definitely choose different actions and choices and training techniques and all of these other kind of things if I wanted to devote my time and energy to training that dog to not scratch at our window. Or I could just let all of that stuff happen and then deal with what it brings up inside of me when it actually happens, rather than being stressed about it happening. Or like, sometimes I'll come up with like a plan. This time it's not going to happen. And then I spend all of this energy trying to come up with a solution to not get her to do this one thing that she's 100% going to do. So I place the expectation again externally for me, only to be disappointed and angry and upset and activated in some emotional response. And now I can just be like, yep, she's doing it.
Yeah.
She met my expectations, right? Because I have zero expectations of her. Like, her requirements for us giving her like love, food, and shelter, she's met. She didn't have to do anything else. She's met all of those expectations. She gets all of those things. She gets love, food, and shelter from us. We're going to take care of her. So she's done. She met them all. You don't have to do anything else. Now,
That's not an expectation from her. I don't understand what you're saying.
what I mean is, like, if she never not scratches at the window to come in and drive us crazy, I'm still going to love her. I'm still going to take care of her. I'm still going to feed her. I'm still going to house her. I'm still like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not going to like abandon the dog because she isn't trained properly.
Right.
And it's the same thing with people.
You're not going to abandon them if you can't train them properly.
No. It's just, if I no longer have all of these unreasonable expectations that are self-created within my own mindset and my own head about how I want to proceed through my life so that I'm not triggered and or activated, then great.
Yeah.
You'll be by yourself living in a cabin. You know what I mean? I that's what it would take for me
Right.
to, otherwise I have to get comfortable with not people not meeting my expectations, right? Because people will always disappoint you. People will only disappoint you if your expectation is that they're supposed to not disappoint you. Does that make sense? Or did that one not really make sense?
No, you're good.
So that's what I've been trying to do, is just really look at the expectations for relationships and then just life, and recognizing like, oh, I was pretty connected. I was pretty attached to that expectation. I was pretty attached to that result.
See, that's what I'm saying. That kind of sounds like demands, because there was like demanding energy for things to be a certain way. It doesn't seem like an expectation. It seems like a demand. Like this is what it needed to be, or else there's punishment that comes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying like the difference there. Because like earlier I said boundary on what I'm going to allow in my space, right? It's the other person doesn't have to shift. And I don't think you really heard that. But it's the demands of other people to show up in a certain way that is that expectation that gets, it's almost like expectations are, I feel like they're like the middle ground here in a sense to look at. Like there's a whole other factor, because we have demands, obligations, and needs and boundaries. And then we have expectations in the middle, and how expectations of how things are going to happen, play out, hurt us.
Yeah.
And then it also hurts us when we use expectations as a weapon to say against needs and boundaries.
Yes.
Well, what did you think was going to happen? You're not supposed to have any thoughts. You're not supposed to have any like intentions.
Yeah.
Like that's also hurting.
Yes.
So I'm looking at that space of being curious about like what expectations actually are, cultivating can be. Like needs, boundaries are healthy, demands, obligations are not. And there's this space in the middle like that gets convoluted. The expectations that I had of life are the things that have let me down. The things that have hurt from my own expectations. Expectations come from unmet needs, having these things and being like, oh, I'm not allowed to have needs. And every time I had a need, I'm like, oh, that was an expectation. So if a need wasn't met from child up, then I was wrong for needing. So what did I learn how to do? Not have needs. Not like, and then when I started to, then it's like this whole, so there's this really, I think there's a delicate space around expectations that can be really explored. Because what you're looking at is, with these expectations, is this a need? Is this a boundary? Is this an obligation? Is this a demand?
I totally agree.
Do you see what I'm?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Okay.
And I mean, just for the sake of conversation, right, I think it is important to kind of nuance all of those things out. And that's kind of the difference between healthy and unhealthy expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the need, like I expect you to show up for me.
Yeah.
Meaning every single day giving me all of your attention. No.
Right.
But when I'm hurt, when I'm injured, when I'm afraid, when I'm sick, like there's a certain level of expectation. This gets joked about all the time, where men are like, you know, they can't, you got a little man cold, or you a little sick. Like I've definitely, we've had that funny little dynamic in our relationship. But there's also a part of me that like expects you to take care of me when I'm sick.
Yeah.
And I don't mean from like the perspective of like wait on me hand and foot, but also it's almost like the expectation in those moments when I'm sick and I have a cold or I have the flu or something like that. It's the expectation of grace. Like you are going to pick up some of the slack that I drop because I don't feel good. And then you're also going to be accommodating and helpful, in the event that I need something. But that doesn't equal waiting on me hand and foot and having to do everything for me. But those kind of like expectations that I have of you and the needs for me and our relationship, I think those are ones that we've either...
You're asking for nurturing.
Yeah, like we've either talked about those or we've been together long enough that we have come to like not expect those things, but appreciate those things.
There you go.
Like if for some reason we're both sick at the same time,
Which happens.
or sometimes, and this is a silly metaphor to kind of run the lens through all of this, but it kind of makes sense in my brain, where it's like, if I'm sick, but maybe you're really taxed or really busy, or you've got a lot of stuff on your plate at the time anyways, then my expectation isn't like, well, you should drop everything because I need some Kleenexes, right? No, but I've become accustomed to knowing that you are going to be there to help and to nurture and to support and to love across the board in regards to a bunch of different things in our relationship. And there's a bunch of expectations that we've just had to kind of like let go of.
Right? Yeah.
Because...
And we still have work to do in that space.
Do we? I think we're done.
No, we're perfect.
We do
like
still
there's
have
still
some.
like I've just like just that realization just like of what we've come to today of like that distinction, because it's either like I'm really fighting that like I'm allowed to have needs, and no, like just it gets so mixed up. That ego has such a good way of coming in and justifying crappy behavior and criticizing healthy behavior, shaming healthy behavior. It's this like, oh, I can be like this because for the expectations, but then the healthy stuff is like, you're wrong for that. So it gets really, really convoluted. And I don't think I've had like, this conversation didn't go the way I thought it was the way I expected it to go.
Me too.
Like it's very different. And just like opening it up is like opening up so much in my space right now. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be way funner.
Well, how did you think it was going to be funny when you're like, let's talk about the expectations in our relationship? We don't have sex. I'm like, what the fuck? All right.
Is that
this
what
where
it
we're
sounded
going?
like?
Inside, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Not outside. But it was like, that's like, that just totally, like, even in that moment, I was like, oh, here's this. Like, I totally had the convoluted expectation. Was it a demand? No. Was it an obligation? No. Was it a need? Was it a boundary? No. So it was total gray area expectation of something that I created in my head to be something different.
See, I think expectations
it's so confusing.
Yeah. I think expectations are innocent.
Okay.
I think they're just an innocent thing that's a childlike experience.
Okay.
Because there's some part of like, I've thought about like the expectations that I placed on my parents, but from the perspective of like, just by my sheer existence. So not by an ask or a want or a need necessarily. Like I want a Nintendo for Christmas, right? Or I want, or my own bedroom, or I need these new clothes or these new shoes, right? All of these wants and needs that I had as a child.
Or a hug, or like to be safe, or right? They go.
Get a little heavy there, babe, with those asks.
Okay.
I'm just looking for a new pair of Nikes, but I guess unconditional love would be helpful as well. But those ones that I basically like the expectations that I brought with me as a newborn child into my family, right? That level of expectations that I brought with me, like those are needs. Exactly. Those are needs.
Yeah.
And then not having those needs met, and then just innocently continually asking for those needs in some way.
Yeah.
So the unmet need in childhood for me, right, from newborn, even in the belly, Craig, never getting those needs met to their fullest extent or in a healthy way, then all of these other unhealthy expectations / needs / wants / demands.
Find a way to get them met in unhealthy ways, which turned
Exactly.
into expectations of other people.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so it's just an innocent thing, right?
Yeah, I see that.
Where it's like, oh, I have a naive, innocent part of me that just expects to be loved unconditionally. And I think that part of us that expects us to be loved unconditionally is that really pure part of us that is still connected to that unconditional love. So it's like it's just breath. Why would you not breathe this unconditional love? This is what we're all made of and connected to. So it's just this naivety of like, oh, of course that would happen because that's what is. And then that's not met anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? There's nobody that's meeting you with unconditional love in your life. really, until at some point, maybe. And then that's even to be questioned in some regards. Anyways, I just think that when I started unpacking all of this stuff for myself and really looking at it, I was really hard on myself, because it's like, there you go again, Craig. Here you go again, getting expectations, blah, 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 blah. Like, I was really negative on
so that's such a punishment mentality.
Exactly. And instead I'm just like, yeah, I got expectations. That's normal.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, that's going to happen. And now I'm seeing it from an outside perspective, like watching myself in relation to those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And then recognizing like, oh, I can feel immediately now when I set an expectation down, my belly just goes, oh.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the twist and the torment and the anxiety and the uncomfortable, and I don't have any of that push-pull that's taking place inside of my body when I just set an expectation down.
Yeah.
Or when I have
That's
awareness of an expectation. It's not even having to do anything with it. Because that's the other thing too, is so oftentimes for me, expectations are just imaginary. They haven't happened yet.
Right.
Something will come up. This is a good example, right? We talked about doing this podcast episode. So immediately I'm starting to create expectations for what that event is going to look like.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm preparing myself to go into that situation so that I know what to expect.
Yeah. Are you going into that situation with thoughts of how I'm going to show up?
Absolutely.
Okay.
How you're going to show up, I have
shit.
I have created the entire experience in my mind before it's happened.
Okay.
And I do that with everything.
Okay.
And that creation process of the entire event before it's going to happen is twofold for me. It's how I see things, how I visualize things. It's how my brain operates and works in some regards, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's how I dream. It's how I create. Like there's a part of that process of my brain that's like, I'm not interested in tweaking or changing that. There's nothing wrong with that part of me. But the other part of me is the part of me that can't deal with it when it doesn't turn out that way. So then it's like...
Then here comes meltdowns.
Yeah.
When things don't go the way you expected them to go.
So it's kind of like our tagline where it's like, expect the best, plan for the greatest, right? Where I used to expect the best, but then I would plan for the worst.
Yeah.
And
that's literally how I was like, that was a loving thing that I was told to do. Like, and then the other one, cautiously optimistic.
Right. All of these things that are teaching us how to be prepared for our expectations to not be met.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And now what I'm doing is it's like, I'm not even entering into the agreement that an expectation is something that should be met.
Okay.
Instead, it's just something that happens. Mm-hmm. And by consciously paying attention to it happening, it's allowing me to stay within my own body and my own autonomy and regulate my own nervous system rather than having it dysregulated by outside forces.
Right. And I'm going to have to get curious at that because I can see like, for example, fear and anxiety. Those are, I think, when I get the biggest expectations. You know, when I'm afraid, when I'm anxious and I'm like, okay, I start micromanaging and trying to like mitigate this because it's not often I'm afraid this is going to happen to me. I mean, that definitely happens and I've spent time there, but it's usually this is going to happen to you. You're not going to be safe here. I have to protect here and I have to not allow this to happen and all of these things. Now there's a part of where, you are an active participant in your life and in your children's life. You're not just like, oh, fuck around and find out. Hope you make it. That's not that. But I get very, what's the word I'm looking for? Extreme, I guess, when it's like fear and anxiety with expectations. And then when it gets challenged, it's like, wait, no, it has to go this way or you're going to die. It's an extreme. So it drives me. But you were just mentioning how that's when it brings up your expectations is, I think you said when you said it different, you said it backwards. And I'm like, okay, so if expectations make you feel anxious, and for me, I saw it as anxiety and fear made me have expectations. Like what wasn't met before that caused the anxiety to come in that, you know what I mean? I'm looking at it from behind the scene instead of like, wait, I don't know. There's so much more for me to look at here.
Are you talking about what is the root cause of like the anxiety to start with?
No, not, I mean, yes, in a sense, but if I'm saying like, if I'm already activated, was that from unmet or, what's the word I'm looking for now? What is this whole topic about? All I can think of is anxieties, and that's not the word. Anxiety and extremes. Thank you. Expectations.
What have we been talking about for an hour?
I knew what we were talking about. I just couldn't remember the word because I'm activated.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember it. So is that from like already having, like, this is me work behind the scenes. This is shadow work. Is there subtle expectations that I've been placing out that weren't met, that created the anxiety and fear, that now it's in my focus, and now that I can see it, put your pointer finger away. I'll point at you.
No, this is what I'm talking about.
Right.
This
and
is
then
the work that I've been doing.
It's out there. So now I'm creating these. Now I can see expectations. So I have subconscious behind the scenes that are coming up, and now conscious choices, like demands. That's when it gets into demands. Like, you will choose this option,
right,
to keep you safe by God.
Right. We place those demands on external forces in order to control how we're feeling internally.
Yes. So that's that demand obligation thing.
Yeah.
So what's happening over here? Where's the disconnect? Because needs and boundaries are healthy. Obviously, we speak of that consciously. And boundaries are new to me. I haven't been able to have boundaries a good portion of my life. So I've been really like honing in on those. I would love to say I'm an expert on boundaries. I'm fucking not. Do I have some really good healthy boundaries now? You damn right I do. I've been working really hard on those. Do I know how to set healthy boundaries in every aspect of my life for myself? Not yet. I'm still trying to discover what my needs actually are before they're a complete, like they haven't been before I'm like at a implosion or explosion point for them not being met. What can I meet myself? So I'm still learning. So there's a space between expectations and needs and boundaries before it hits demands and obligations that I'm disconnected from, that I have to connect to and see, like, what is this space here? What's happening here that is causing this disturbance that pulls in the fear and anxiety, sitting out, just waiting in the corners, like, here we go. Is she going to pull us in? She pulled us in. So it's that, like, that connection that I can't quite see it. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I think it makes sense. Whether or not it's making sense to the people that are listening right now, that's secondary.
Somebody's sitting on their head right now, like, maybe I can see it if I look at it this way. What the hell is she saying?
If you had an expectation of understanding what we were going to be talking about this episode,
clearly
you're
new to the podcast.
That's on you. That's your fault. That's your expectation that
I don't like that.
That you created in your own heads. We did not fail. We're making sense.
I know what's triggering me. I know what's triggering me with this. It's what you just said. If you had that's your fault.
Yeah.
There's that unhealthy, that spiritual toxicity, that is like a big thing of, I can do whatever I want to you. It's your fault if you are hurt by it, if you react. So I can be like, shit, that's up to you. That's your fault. How do you feel about it? Like, that's how you feel. You chose to feel that way. Like, actually, you know what I mean? So that is that bypassing, gaslighting, toxicity is what that is, like, almost triggering in me. So I'm being reactive in that space because of that. And I didn't quite make the connection, but I hear it now. As soon as you're like, if this, like, that's your fault, I'm like, wait a minute. There's accountability to be had. It's not up to us to mitigate, manage, and control how other people feel. It's not up to us to make sure everybody's happy, even though we may have learned that. But also, if we're hurt, there's more than just, oh, that's my fault. Because what did we learn? You're right, that's my fault. We start shaming ourselves. So there's so much gray water here that I don't know how to sift out in all these different directions and angles. I'm like, oh, this is a juicy conversation.
You know how, like, I'll paint some pictures for you and you see if you can relate to them, right? I wake up in the morning and I'm checking in with myself in some ways, right? I get out of bed to go pee and I'm feeling my body. I'm standing there peeing and suddenly my brain starts clicking on and I start ruminating about the day or the thoughts or the experiences or whatever's taking place. And at some point I get a general sense of quote unquote my mood.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have my mood for the day, or at least my mood for the morning. So it's like it's a check-in with myself to see where I'm at. And then it gives me a framework for, okay, I guess it's going to be one of these kind of days because of whatever my mood is, right?
Okay.
And then the majority of that kind of just happens subconsciously. And what I'm realizing, and again, this is just my own self, right? My own healing work, whatever we want to call it. I have an expectation that the normal homeostasis, like place that Craig exists, should be one of joy and or happiness. And, or even maybe not to the extent of joy and happiness, but regulated.
Yeah.
Like we can just keep it simple, right? I have an expectation that my nervous system is supposed to be regulated. And I'm like, where did that come from?
Right. You're never supposed to have any extremes.
Where did that expectation come from?
Where did it come from?
Where did that idea that like, oh, I'm just supposed to be not like void of highs and lows, but that I'm supposed to just be like in a everything's good mood all the time.
Okay.
And that is such a silly expectation. And I have to continually remind myself that, because this morning I woke up and I did that self-analyzing process that I kind of explained, right? And again, it's not so conscious. I'm not sitting there thinking like, okay, first check your body. How's your body feeling, Craig? Oh, you can feel this. It's not consciously. I'm just cognitively aware of my morning as I'm waking up. And at some point I realized that I was like having difficult emotions. And this is at like 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm sitting on the couch by myself journaling. And I'm like, why am I having difficult emotions? Where is this coming from? And then I have to start searching for difficult, like I have to start searching for explanations of why I'm feeling off.
Right.
Right. And then I just remembered, right? Because I've continually been reminding myself over and over and over again. And then I also believe that the universe is like doing its part of reminding me like, hey, dude, sometimes there's clouds.
Right.
Sometimes it rains.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's just an off day.
Yeah.
And there isn't an explanation for it other than that's normal and that's what life is supposed to be. And so I had an expectation that if I was feeling off, that I could then figure out why and then make the off feeling go away.
Right.
And get back to the good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole cycle is like the expectation that I'm supposed to be just good. Right. I'm supposed to feel good. I'm supposed to be in this like, yeah, everything's good. I'm feeling good. I'm in a good mood. I'm okay. I feel good. I'm happy. And the reality is that's an expectation. That idea that I have that expectation that that's what life is supposed to look like and or feel like or consist of does not allow for the vast variability. Like, I mean, so oftentimes I think nowadays, as I've processed this more and more, is it's like I'm giving way less shit about why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling and way more about just feeling it.
Right.
I would waste so much time trying to figure out why I was sad and trying to identify that and trying to place it on an action, a reaction or a decision or an interaction or a mood or a fucking, well, the moon is in the third house. Like all of these externalizations of why I would try to justify not feeling good instead of just not feel good.
Yeah.
And so now it's like the expectation that I have now is like, I'm going to feel good. I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to feel everything in between, and it's all going to pass. So like, that's my new expectation is it's not that I should feel good all the time. And if I don't, then I have to figure out why.
Right.
It's that everything's going to pass. Everything will pass. And I don't need to solve it. I don't need to figure it out. I don't need to diagnose it. I don't need to externally place it somewhere else in the moment, because doing all this like introspective work at 6:15 in the morning, trying to think about last night and the conversations that we've had, or I'm trying to, am I already feeling anxiety over the podcast episode we're going to, record later today? All of this like externalize expectations, like all of this stuff that I'm placing outside of my nervous system, instead of just recognizing that, oh, I think like 99% of what takes place inside of our body is systemic of what's inside of our body.
Yeah.
It's what we eat. It's what we drink. It's trapped emotion. It's, do you know what I mean? All of that stuff that is taking place inside of our body. It's not all of these things that we externalize it to be, right? It's really just like, yeah, that's what's happening. Just feel it. Just be with it. That was a big, long rant. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah.
Recap
I think,
everything I just said.
Like
right
there
now.
was very much, right? There is very much that whole obligation and even like publicly shaming of that space. Like you have to be happy. You just have to be grateful. And you can't be grateful, or you can't be unhappy if you're being grateful. Like there's so much of it that's shamed around, like you're not doing work, you're giving other people the path, all of that. If you're feeling anything that isn't calm, content, happy, joyful, grateful, then you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And that is such an that's just bullshit. I was going to say unhealthy and tolerant. It's just bullshit.
Yeah.
That is bullshit. Nobody has that. If you have that, like, okay, I'm going to say nobody. Maybe you do, right? Who's to say? But there is a cycle for everything. Like it's going to be, there's clouds. It's going to rain. Like nothing can grow without rain. Like all of these things that come, it has a place for it. To bypass our emotions and try to fix them because we're wrong, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Right? That's not and if it's the same, if we're always sad, upset, angry, depressed, like that's a state where we need to bring some sunshine in. That's a spot where we need some help. It's not just like, oh, just think positive thoughts, just be grateful. It's like, okay, there's something else going on here, and I need some assistance here because this hit a level where I need some help. I need some teamwork to help pull me out of this space. And it's so unreasonable and harmful for us to have the conception or the perception that we're always supposed to be happy, joyful, balanced, calm, grateful. That's a great state to be in. I love feeling that. But it passes. And then it's the same. Like you said, this is going to pass. Just like the happiness is going to pass. The sadness is going to pass. The pain is going to pass. All of these things, it keeps changing.
Yeah.
And to be like, I'm wrong when I'm feeling this human emotion. I'm only supposed to feel these is so detrimental. That totally relates. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That was a hard one.
What was
like
that was
one? Like just felt like every time I had a negative emotion, I was wrong. And like you're resonating with that. So like get to that point where I'm allowed to have off days. I'm allowed to be sad. I'm allowed to like have days where you don't get out of bed. I'm allowed to have days where I feel like I can accomplish anything, and I do. It's that whole thing.
The other big part of it too that I've recognized, like this thing that we're talking about right now, right? Mm-hmm. That you're okay to be upset. You're okay to have off days. You're okay to feel bad. The majority of the time that I feel those things are connected to expectations. Are connected to, I'm feeling this way right now because some external thing isn't meeting an expectation that I placed on it.
Is that okay to feel that?
It is okay to feel that way.
Yeah. Is it okay to be like, that didn't go the way I wanted it to go?
Yeah. Like that's the other big thing that we need to say, right?
Right.
This isn't bad. Like we're talking a lot about these expectations and everything. Like, but what you just said, it's totally okay to have that expectation and to have it. Yeah. And to still not have it be met, and to then feel it like that's okay to go through all of that process. And yeah, that is okay. And for me, it's recognition too that like when I let go of those expectations, that what I thought was sad feeling went with it. And I'm recognizing like, oh, I'm feeling.
We're not supposed to be numb.
Well, it's like so much of my anxiety, which we would then label as fear or sadness, is just expectations that aren't met. And as soon as I just recognized those, then I'm like, oh, I'm not anxious anymore. The fear goes away. The anxiety goes away.
well, you rock on with your bad self. I'm still ficking.
Yeah.
I'm ficking. I'm
It
trying to figure that
feels
out. I'm still
because I've been
feeling
doing
some
this
sadness.
I've been doing this with you, where it's like, I'm trying to think of an example because I had one just the other day that came up. I feel like there are certain expectations that you and I both met for each other, and now I'm not meeting them. And what's happening is you're like looking for me in those moments. You're like, hey, you're usually standing here next to me meeting this expectation. And I'm like, yeah, but that's like, you didn't ask. And it's not from the perspective of like, well, I shouldn't have to ask for all. Yeah, like you get a ton of expectations met by me that you don't have to ask for. And that's not what I'm talking about, right? Like that innate thing of like, I'm going to love you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to be here for you. Like I'm going to, all of those things, you get those. We deserve, like, that's what we share in our relationship together. And then there's other ones. Like I'm really trying to think of the example that happened the other day, because there was something that it's not going to come to me and it's not super important, but I'm just recognizing that I would jump to meet expectations that you did not ask for.
Yeah.
And that were not helpful. Right. And instead I would just sit with, like, it comes down to like where the rubber meets the road for this in our relationship, especially for me, is being able to just listen to you. And I don't mean like, oh, it's so hard to hear your voice. What I mean is I'm not trying to problem solve or fix anything. So when you're talking and I'm just listening, that's me actively, consciously trying to heal that expectation, because I have a self-imposed expectation to fix all of your problems. I have a self-imposed expectation that if you're not happy, then I need to solve and fix that because it's my fault in some way. And if I can't solve or fix that, then I am lacking or failing as your partner and as your husband and everything else in life. Now, that's an expectation that I have placed on myself, but truthfully, society did that at some point, right? I got that program, I got that message, and then I just thought that it was mine. And then I did everything that I could to kind of meet that over and over and over and over and over again, when ain't nobody asking for it. You're not asking for it. Like, it's definitely at a point in our relationship where it's important for me to just listen and not fix. So I'm trying to see other areas where it's like, oh, maybe this is one where it's important for you to struggle in. It's important for you to figure out. It's important for you to navigate. And I just get to listen. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. I'm so glad you're talking about that, because there's a flip side to that too, that is so, so beneficial. Like, first of all, the pressure to have to fix everything for everybody is too much, right? And again, that's an imposed thing that got placed on you, that was like needs weren't being met and you were expected to meet others' needs, regardless of how you felt, like in place of your own needs. Like, so this just like when we pull it back, there's an inception point, right? That just gets created and build up. So that's so much pressure for anybody to have, that it's up to me to make sure you're okay always. Like, unless you're holding a newborn, right? Because it is up to you, right? But just to have that space. But there's something that comes with that gets challenging, which creates resentment. So when it's up to you to fix all the things and you're always trying to do that, there's also the flip side of when you can't fix it, then what comes out is making me wrong for having those needs, having those feelings. So if you can't fix it, there's not a fix for it, then it's easy. I'm just wrong for that. And I just need to think different. So I'm now wrong for having these feelings, having these emotions, which hurts and starts to shut down. I don't want you to fix things. I don't want to be wrong for things. So when you stop trying to fix, then first of all, you're like, some of that pressure's coming off of you. It's not your responsibility anymore. You don't have to carry all of that. And that's got to feel good, because that's a lot to carry. And then on the flip side, I have more stuff that I'll talk to you about because it's safer. So you get to know more of me without expectations of you to fix anything, without need of you to fix anything. And then I'm like, whew, I can talk to you about these things. I can talk to you about things. There's freedom. I'm not wrong for it. And you're not going to come in and tell me what I should be doing or how to do this. And the times when I'm like, I need some help, either you can help me or you don't have the answers. And that's fine too. But it creates so much space when we let that go. It just creates so much space.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
I think too that that space where it's like you're sad and you want to talk about being sad and whatever made you sad.
Right.
In the past, I would hear that you're sad, and then I would hear what made you sad, and then I would look at trying to, we just need to fix that thing that made you sad. And it might be like an interaction with somebody else, right? You might have just had a conversation with somebody else, or it might be a thought that just came to you, right? Of a memory or something like that. Whatever it is, my old process would be take in the information, hear what was the cause of the information, cause of the sadness or the pain, and then look to fix it. And then exactly right. I had never seen that part necessarily as clearly as I did in this moment. Like, if I can't fix the sadness, then my solution to that is don't be sad. You should just be happy, right? And I don't mean it from that generic of a standpoint, but how often is it's like, well, think about that situation this way instead of that way.
Yeah, I'm going to change the way you thought about that. I'm going to change because the problem is you. You just need to fix you. Like, which is still a...
Well, you might hear it through the lens of like, the problem is you just fixed you. But in my mind, it's like the problem is the sadness.
Yeah.
Make the sadness go away, which means think about it like I think about it.
Right.
Think about that problem the way that I think about the problem, because I'm not sad about it.
Right.
So if I'm not sad about it, then you should think about it the way that I think about it, because turns out I'm pretty happy about it. And all of that is so not helpful.
No, that's not helpful at all.
All of it, right?
Yeah.
Instead, I'm just sitting in this space of like, oh, can I let go of the expectation, and even this expectation of that I'm now placing on myself of like, can I just sit in this space and listen? That's an expectation that I'm putting on myself now. And I can feel like what happens when I fail, when I don't meet that new expectation that I have now placed on myself, and what that feels like for me. And again, it's just like reflecting back more of like, okay, I don't need to place that I can place that expectation on myself, but I can place it from a place of like love and compassion for myself, as opposed to, well, you're a fucking loser, failure, critical of myself in all of those different ways. Is it's like, yeah, I didn't do a great job this time.
Yeah. And
next time I'll do better. And next time I'll do better. And next time I'll do better. And it's like, I didn't do a good job, and that's okay. I'm practicing. So I have I'm still full of expectations for myself, but I'm also right there along with all of those expectations is this love for me and the recognition that I'm going to make mistakes, and that there are cloudy fucking days, for hell's sakes, right? I get to wake up and just not be in a good mood for no other reason than that happens sometimes. And I can just be with the not in a good mood feeling throughout my day. And it might go, by 11, it might be gone. But if I'm hyper focused on it, then likelihood it's going to be around until the next day. So
maybe longer.
So interesting.
There's a practice, and it's come up in my space a couple of times, and I've actually forgotten about it, which is telling me that if it's come up a couple of times and I've forgotten about it and it's coming up now, it's probably something that I should do. There's more validity to it than I've given it. Not that I've dismissed it. I've just haven't been able to embody that. And it's this thing of where you intentionally make little mistakes, right? Color on something and then draw outside the line, make a flash through it, spill a cup of water, spill a cup of milk. Oh God. Just these little things where you make little mistakes and allow it to be okay. Just little mistakes, allow it to be okay. And then when you subconsciously, when you accidentally make mistakes, when you're doing it consciously, when you're intentionally making mistakes and learning how to let it be okay, letting your expectations not be met for yourself, you're creating that practice of when you start to make little mistakes. When you had this expectation for you to be able to do things this way, show up this way, you're creating a practice of more self-compassion in that. You're not holding yourself to this shaming from making that mistake. And there's also another point to it, that it's our outcomes, our expectations of outcomes. It's doing things that have no outcome. No, it's the example is dig a hole and then fill it back up and walk away. Like doing these little things that it literally serves no purpose. There's nothing to gain from it. There's no expectation. So you're practicing being able to move into spaces without that, and just like seeing what that feels like, starting to cultivate that feeling in your body, learning how to feel something that you've never been taught how to feel. So you're teaching yourself what it feels like to allow mistakes and to not have attachments to outcomes, not to have these expectations. Attachments to outcomes is a big way to look at it. So there's that. And I think I'm going to start trying, but I'm immediately like, well, I'm not spilling shit on purpose because I do that enough accidentally. But like, what things can I do? What conscious mistakes can I make to ease and allow forgiveness and space for myself for all of the fucked up again things that I do, right? What things can I do to ease that, to allow mistakes? Mistakes are okay. Mistakes are okay. Mistakes are going to happen. Nobody's perfect. And everybody says, yeah, nobody's perfect, yet we expect people to be perfect, or we expect ourselves that. So what little things can I do? What little happy mistakes, make it a bird, right? What little mistakes can I do consciously and practice forgiving myself? What actions can I take that literally have no result? And that's not because people are like, well, I'll just give. I'll do nice things for somebody. And that's great. Do that. However, that's not what we're talking about, because that automatically has something attached to it, right? So it's literally like, I'm going to put some leaves in a bag and then I'm going to go dump them all out. Like things that have no rhyme or reason, and there's no benefit, there's no harm, there's just nothing. Dig a hole, fill it back up. What the hell did that do?
Right. Go rake our front yard poorly.
Right? Go pour it all back out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no benefit, there's
Yeah.
no gain, there's no expectation, there's no result. It's just an action free.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
to
a really good
that.
practice.
Well, it's been coming, like, we'll see. We'll see if I can remember it this time.
I'm excited for what tiny mistakes you make. We'll see how.
Also point for whoever else just got anxious with that. You can do them in private. Nobody has to see. You can practice in private.
Did we not? Oh, we did. We've had that light on our salt lamp. Shorts out.
Oh,
anyways.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay.
It's practicing making mistakes, and we still love it.
You did so good.
So this week's episode, or not this week's episode, but this week's question. Are you ready, babe?
Yeah.
We'll switch up and we'll go to the question, and then because I got to go pee. So my wife is really strong right now. Oh, wait. Let me reread that. Sorry, I misspoke. My wife is really struggling right now with something, but she won't talk to me about it. It's something to do with her sister, not me, and I want to help her, but every time I try to say something trying to help, she gets upset with me. How can I help her? What you got?
Well, I think it's great that you want to help her and that you care enough to want to be able to help her and step in that space. And if you really want to help her, the fact that she's not coming to you right now, maybe allow her a little space in that. And something that you want to let her know that you're there. How would this feel? What if how would this feel inside you? Would this feel like you were doing enough in that space and still like actually helping, which is what you want to do, and not having her have to meet your need for that? And what if you said something like, I know you're really struggling with your sister right now. You don't have to tell me anything about it. Just know if you want to talk, I'm here to listen. And then you put it down and you just let it go. And then see if she comes to you. She might not. This might not be something that she wants to work through with you. And that's not that anything's wrong with your relationship. Nothing's wrong with your relationship. There's just things that sometimes we work through in different ways. So you can let her know that you're there with no obligation, and then just put it down and see how that goes. And it might just be that she felt space and safe for the next time that things come up, then maybe she'll want to take it to you, or not, who knows, right? But you're creating that space for her to feel, and she knows that you're there if she needs you on that. And then you can put it down too.
The part for me, that act of being like, I'm here if you need anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the need that men have to fix and solve problems is so inherent to who we are, in a sense. And whether that's right or wrong or how it's formed or anything like that, right? That's a different conversation. But that desire to do something with that energy of like somebody that I love is in pain.
Right.
Somebody that I love is having some sort of distress or heartache or something is wrong with the person that I love, and I need to fix that for them. Or I just want to be there with them in that moment so that they're not necessarily alone. And sometimes people don't want that, right? Sometimes people are going through, sometimes your partner is going through things that they want to go through by themselves.
Yeah.
And that's healthy and that's normal and that's fine. And so for me, when I do that, when I say, hey, I'm here if you need to talk about anything, then that desire that I have to act and to do something, I then reflect around and put it on myself because what I mean by that sounded terrible. I'll just make that my fault. The need to problem solve and to fix what is causing you distress in the moment, when that isn't helpful, and it very rarely is, the action that I then take, because I need to take action in some way, the action that I then take is to get super, super curious about the feeling that is coming up inside of me that is pushing me to try to fix. Does that make sense?
Huh.
So it's like in your question that you've asked, right? What is that thing inside of you that you are having a hard time sitting with, watching your wife be in distress or seeing her upset about whatever it is that she's going through with her sister right now? Like, the more that you can sit with that feeling inside of you, then the easier it becomes to just listen and to be with them, and the safer place that you become for them to be able to share whatever it is that they're going through, because you're able to then sit with uncomfortable emotions with yourself first, which then makes it much easier to sit with other people. So that need to do something, to act, to fix, to problem solve, to like, come on, tell me what's going on. How can we solve this? That feeling inside of you is the feeling that you need to sit and process and kind of navigate, because she doesn't want any of your help right now, and that's okay. So it's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We have, like you said, one more episode of the podcast this year. It'll be next week after this one. And then we're going to go on a little break, a little Christmas holiday break, and then we'll be back in 2024. But you still got one more this year. And in the meantime, make sure you call us with questions. It's 423-521-0355. Go to the website. Follow us on Facebook. We're still reaching out for 100,000 followers on Facebook. You can come be one of them. We would love it. And anything else, Ben?
That's it.
Expect the best.
Bound for the greatest.